Good morning, Sac City. Welcome into another edition of the Sac City Podcast. I am your host, the one and only Vinny Milani, joined as always by my best friend in the whole entire world. He is Aaron the Mukesiah Mukes. And below us, we have your boy, my boy, and everybody's boy. He is AJ Johnson. It is a beautiful November 22nd morning here in the city. Not an episode here today is about to go underway. It is the Fantasy Drive presented by the Sac City Podcast. We've got all of your fantasy content that you need to win your leagues and to reminisce on what happened in Week 11 for your fantasy weeks. We've got a great show ahead of us. We are diving into recapping what happened in Week 11 in the fantasy world, recapping what happened in last night's Monday Night Football game, and then we also take a look ahead into Week 12 in Aaron's rankings and his waiver wire must-haves this week as we get closer and closer to the playoffs, the fantasy playoffs, and get closer and closer to trade deadlines. We're going to talk some trades with you guys in a little bit as well. But we had a Monday Night Football game that we must dive into, so let's do it. Last night, we were able to see a not so much of a battle matchup between the San Francisco 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals. The Niners defeated the Cardinals 38-10 on the back of a stellar performance from Jimmy Garoppolo. 4 touchdowns for Jimmy G in this one as the Niners defeat the Arizona Cardinals here. This was a game that really no one thought the Niners would lose. They did not. They handled their business. They dominated the game. It was Colt McCoy that ended up starting for the Cards last night. Aaron, what were your takeaways from last night's game? Because it's in a game like this, it's like we knew it was going to happen. We saw it coming, but maybe there was something that stood out to you the most.
Not anything that I haven't regurgitated a number of times on this show already. The 49ers are a really good football team, and their offense is going to be very hard to stop if Jimmy Garoppolo does not turn the football over and they're ahead. Look, I've been probably one of the most critical people about Jimmy Garoppolo as there's been on this planet. And my thoughts haven't changed. But he's a really, really good game manager when things are going right and when they're ahead and they don't have to worry about coming back and they can dictate tempo and pace. He is really good at what he does. It's when he's forced to make throws in critical moments when they're down. That's the part that I worry about Jimmy Garoppolo. So the one thing I saw again last night is from start to finish, they pretty much controlled the game, and he looked like a quarterback. It was why you would give a quarterback $100 million, because things were right. And now when you add in a Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel's healthy and George Kittle's healthy, this offense is one of the best offenses in football. You know, we talk about the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs and what they're able to do with their offense because of their quarterback. The Niners can duplicate or replicate similar stuff, but not because of necessarily just their quarterback, but because of their dynamic players that they have in space, and then also the play calling of Kyle Shanahan. So there was no surprise here for me. The 49ers are one of the best teams in the NFC. They're one of the best teams in football. I told you they would be my favorite right now in the NFC to get to the Super Bowl. I still believe that, especially with the struggles we've seen now from Philadelphia. Dallas had a letdown game. Minnesota played this past week and had a bad game. I think that the 49ers are the prime candidate to come out of the NFC as long as Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't screw it up. So this game pretty much was business as usual. Obviously, no Kyler Murray. D-Hop did what he did. But the Niners offense, man, it's just so multiple. It's impressive.
Yeah, and since adding CMC, this offense just has gotten better. Shocker. You add Christian McCaffrey and your offense gets better. Here are the stats after Christian McCaffrey joined the Niners. Everything up, up, up. Every weapon on the Niners value has gone up, up, up. George Kittle, 2 touchdowns last night. Brandon Ayuk, 2 touchdowns last night. Deebo Samuel also had a good game. Of course, Christian McCaffrey had a good day as well. It was just production from everybody on the Niners offense in this victory over the Cardinals. They now move to tied atop the NFC West with the Seahawks. And I think we're all on the side of now the Seahawks might start taking control of this division, but we'll see how the weeks progress. AJ, the Cardinals, though, here in this one, they continue to fall. They continue to have a tough season. Again, no Kyler Murray in this one, and they fall to they're not in last place in the NFC West, but they're right there with the Rams. They're 4-7, and the Rams are 3-7. What are we seeing from this team? I know it's hard to take away and assess this team without Kyler Murray, but another only 10-point performance from this team with the weapons that they have and the defense that we were starting to think, okay, maybe this defense can be better than what we expect. A lot of just disappointments coming from the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, and honestly, for them last night, I know you kind of alluded to this, they were just overmatched. I mean, you're going in with the backup quarterback, Colt McCoy, who does have a good handle on that offense, but, the chemistry factor with some of these players, it just isn't at the same level, You look at the chemistry he did have. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is going to do what he does, and then Greg Dortch, a guy that Colt McCoy plays with on the second team and more often. They had themselves a good game, 9 receptions, 103 yards for Dortch. He's played well when he's gotten the opportunity. But then you look at guys who are on the first team, like a James Conner, and just the miscues that they were having with each other. That one interception you just showed from James Conner, that one baffled me. First off, James, just two hands. Like it's an easy turnaround, catch the ball. Go. There's no need to show off there. I don't know if you turned around and didn't think the ball was coming to you and put your hands up late or whatever you want to say. But even besides that, James Conner just didn't look good. Rushing the ball, running right into his offensive line and falling and tripping over himself over and over again. And after that, it seems like he didn't want to run through any of the tackles. Didn't want to run through any of the holes. It seemed like everything he wanted to do was bounce outside at that point because he didn't trust himself running through contact. And, that's not something you're going to have when you're a starting running back in the NFL. So last night, just overmatched in general. This team just doesn't find the right way to click. When Kyler Murray's in there, it seems like he wants to be more about rushing around in the backfield and scrambling than he does want to find his other receivers outside of DeAndre Hopkins. And, defense is going to feast on that when they can. So there's some issues, and obviously it's going to take more than an offseason to figure this out at this point.
Yeah, the Cardinals they continue to sputter. And I remember when Colt McCoy had his first week, there were some people asking, okay, is this offense better without Kyler Murray? Is it better with Colt McCoy because the game plan changed a little bit? Now we're seeing what really comes down to with this offense. And one last note on this game that I thought was interesting, and it actually came before the game and what led up to the game, is that I'm sure people by now know and are well aware of how high where the stadium in Mexico City sits in terms of altitude. The Niners decided to take their practices last week to Colorado to prepare for that altitude, and Arizona did not. And I think that also stands out because it was noticeable how winded and how different one team looked over the other. Even Troy Aikman brought it up in the broadcast last night. Thought that was an interesting note for this game. But the Cardinals do fall to the Niners here, 38-10. Cardinals move to 4-7. Niners 6-4. Next up for the Niners, they'll host the New Orleans Saints on Sunday. And next up for the Cardinals, they host the Los Angeles Chargers. That does it for our Monday Night Football recap. It is now time to get into our Week 11 fantasy football recap here, talking about all the action that took place on Sunday and Monday and even Thursday in the football world, talking the fantasy implications and the takeaways. Let's talk winners and losers, gentlemen, here. And Aaron, I'll start with you. Who is the biggest winner, or maybe what's the biggest winner? I guess it can't really be what in this situation. Who's the biggest winner from Week 11 in the fantasy football world?
Yeah, I might be going in a different play here, but Amari Cooper, I think, is somebody we need to talk about. He's just stood out to me over the past, especially a couple of weeks. But when he went to Cleveland, people were really questioning what he was able to do in Dallas as a number one. And I think people forgot how good he was. 12 targets on the day this past weekend, 8 catches, 113 and 2 tutties. But more so than that this is with Jacoby Brissett. Like, if Deshaun Watson comes in and is Deshaun Watson, it's going to be scary how good Amari Cooper is going to be. He's going to be a wide receiver one. You're looking at numbers similar to what DeAndre Hopkins used to put up. Like, that's how good this duo can be, because Amari Cooper is an excellent route runner, one of the better route runners in football. Some of the knocks against him early in his career were drops. Then as he got a little bit older, it was, can he stay healthy? He was always kind of nicked up and dinged up in Dallas, but he's healthy. He's playing right now, and he looks like one of the better receivers in football. And I think people forget how good this guy actually is because he plays in Cleveland. He's kind of a quiet guy, doesn't have that diva, kind of that brash mentality some of the other receivers have. So Amari Cooper, to me, was the big winner this weekend, and I think he's going to be a big winner going forward. I think Cleveland's a nice fit for him. You're on.
I know. I'm happy to hear you say that because I just traded for Amari Cooper in our league. I think that he's just going to continue getting better and better. And now I think with the addition of Donovan Peoples-Jones, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's actually does wonders for Amari Cooper and his growth. I think the addition of another weapon, a valuable weapon in that offense, just boosts Amari Cooper's value in this situation. And then with Watson coming back, I think it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good stuff from Amari Cooper. AJ, what about you? Who's your biggest winner from Week 11?
Yeah, we just kind of talked about him a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and double down on Jimmy Garoppolo. I've talked about him a few times in the past weeks. You know, he was my start of the week, I think 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. Last night had himself a day with 4 touchdowns, and that offense is just buzzing. I think it's something he can keep up. You know, I don't think, he's going to put up, the 30 or whatever it was last night. I'm looking in Sac City League at this point because I have so many other leagues with Jimmy Garoppolo. But I don't think it's going to look like that. Like it did last night, but 20s going forward, not hurting you and definitely giving you what you need from a QB1. And his schedule going forward, he's got the Seahawks coming up in the playoffs, who's been up and down, and Tariq Woolen has done some big things. But after that, where'd it go? After that, he's got Washington and Las Vegas, and we've seen. Even Washington coming up a little bit, we've seen both of those defenses be had. And when you think about those defenses and where they sit against this offense and who they have as a weaponry to deploy, I think I'd take that battle. So I really do like Jimmy Garoppolo going forward. I think he's a big winner, showing he can do it for your fantasy team, and I think that will continue as well.
Yeah, and Jimmy Garoppolo has a very nice playoff schedule for your fantasy league. So that's definitely a guy that it should be on your radar if you don't have a stud quarterback that you've been riding all season long. There's got to be some losers, though. We know this. We know how this works. I did not lose in many leagues this week, so I'm very happy about that. But there are losers everywhere, like AJ. AJ lost this week. So AJ, I'm gonna turn it back to you.
That's
and
true.
Ask you for
AJ,
your
you
losers.
Who'd you lose to, AJ?
Just are we talking about our league or because I won in
Of course,
5,
we're talking about our
6
league. I don't care about leagues I'm not in. I'm talking about leagues.
I got a lot of W's.
I'm talking about leagues I'm in. Leagues you're in with me. How did you do, and who did you lose to?
Technically, we league I'm in with you. We don't do enough together. We should definitely be better friends. My loser this week, I'm going with the Jets backfield. This is something that I was worried with. I had concerns going in. It was mostly about who was going to get the work, and I kind of totally just forgot to leave out that the Patriots defense was just going to stop them altogether. When you're looking for a decision on who's going to carry the load in your backfield between a Michael Carter and James Robinson, and they both go up and put up complete stinkers, you're kind of back at a wash and doing the same thing you want to do. You got to do again next week against a better run defense in Chicago. And by better, I mean better for the Jets. But you look at James Robinson, 22% of the snaps, 7 attempts for 10 yards. Michael Carter, he played 50% of snaps, 8 carries for 19 yards. Couldn't get anything going. I know that whole offense was anemic. It's been a talking point all week. But looking at that backfield after Breece Hall has went down, and that was a strong point for them and really helped the offense buzz. And now you don't have that running game to go with the passing game that is inconsistent at best. It's not a good look, and I'd be a little worried if I'm rostering one of those guys going forward.
Yeah. How we've changed with my feelings on James Robinson now that he's not a Jacksonville Jaguar.
But you love the Jets. What do you mean?
Get them off the roster. Get them off the rosters. Get them off the rosters. I'm kidding. I think that I think you nailed it though with the running backs as the Jets as big losers. Really, you can go with that entire offense as just one big fat loser this week. Aaron, what about you? Who's your biggest loser from this week?
Yeah, I got two, to be honest. I want to mention both, but one of them is a unit and it's a team, and I'm going to say it. And this is not a shot at you, AJ, or anything like that. But it is the Atlanta Falcons, and I'm saying this as a unit, as an offensive unit. The reason they're my loser is because there's no fantasy options there. It's so hard to pull somebody. Kyle Pitts is obviously dead. We didn't even talk about those injuries yet, but he's out for the year, torn MCL. Drake London's been kind of up and down, but really a no-show. Cordero Patterson's now splitting touches with everybody. So barring a kick return touchdown, he would have been a no-show. He fumbled. Tyler Algiers never getting enough touches to really make a fantasy impact. There's just nobody on this offense, including Marcus Mariota, who, despite having a, quote, good game, was still quarterback 14. So still middle of the road outside of the QB1. There's just nobody I'm excited about on this offense. And as of right now, I don't think you could start an Atlanta Falcons player. I just don't. I think there's better options out there. I mean, obviously, if you have Cordero Patterson, that's probably the one you're like, well, I got to start him, put him in my flex and hope for the best. But I don't know that there's another start in a standard 10, 12-team league from the Atlanta Falcons. And that's unfortunate because they're not like losing games every week. It's not like they're putting up 3 points. They scored, 27, 28 points or whatever it was, and none of them had real big fantasy days. And that's concerning to me from the fantasy perspective. Great team win, but from fantasy perspective, I just don't want any part of it. And then the second one I was going to say was Justin Jefferson because he got shut down by Trayvon.
You're the worst. You're the worst. AJ, I'll let you respond to that since you do take the side of the Atlanta Falcons as a fan. No rebuttal to that. Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong. I mean, those are the guys you're playing. Like, I put Drake London in this past week because I had no other option. That's about it. Like, you hope for the the boom potential or some upside play when you have no other option. But other than that, yeah, Cordero Patterson is probably the guy just because of the volume, and you're hoping for the best. But you're going to be frustrated. That's definitely a blind play. Put him in, close your eyes, and hope for the best on the Atlanta offense. So Marcus Mariota's in double super flex leagues or 2 QB leagues, and other than that, like, yeah, I agree. Like, when they're all getting touches, there's no consistency. You don't even have a chance to ride the hot hand because you're spelling them before they can really get going. And I mean, fantasy aside, that's frustrating as a fan to watch as well. So I'm with him. I agree. Just because I'm a fan don't mean I can't be a realist.
Yep. Got to be honest. Yeah, got to be honest with it. And it's tough. I was actually I was just in talks in our league about acquiring Cordero Patterson and or Drake London. And I was like, I think I'd rather Cordero Patterson out of that group if I had to pick one, if I was forced to pick one to get back. But I was trying the player, the person I was trying to trade with was trying to sell me on Drake London. I was like, you can be the number one option in that offense. Doesn't mean I want to have you on my team. Like, it's not that doesn't necessarily mean that I want you on my team if you are the number one option. But that's our winners and losers from week 11. Gentlemen, do you have any other takeaways from week 11 that you want to bring up? Any players that stood out to you that you want to mention or that deserves talking about? Anything? The floor is just throwing it up if anyone wants to.
I tell everybody in fantasy, that's why you draft Travis Kelce in the first round. I'm going to continue to say it. It's why he's a wide receiver 1. We're so quick to push down. We talk about tight ends. The difference between Travis Kelce and every other tight end, it's insane. There's no bigger gap. Travis Kelce might be the most valuable fantasy player to actually have. The difference between him and the next guy, especially this year with no Mark Andrews having those injuries a couple of games, it's ridiculous. If there's one sure thing, it's Travis Kelce. And I'm not saying he can't ever have a bad day, but look at the difference between production between him and everybody else, and you will realize that his value in the first round, it far exceeds anybody's value when you're talking about wide receivers, whether it's Cooper Kupp, whether it's Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill. The difference between the number 1 tight end and the number 2 tight end is significant. And I think that's I think he's got like almost 100 more points than any other tight end. 100 on the season. He has 100 more points than any other tight end. That is a big margin of victory there. And if you invested in Travis Kelce, you're probably doing pretty well because that difference is significant.
Yeah, he's been an absolute game changer. And as someone who has Mark Andrews, it's not even close to the next closest tight end with him. It isn't even close. It really is
100 points.
100 points.
Yeah. It's like close to 100 points.
Just talked about
it. And we joked around about this yesterday. It's like there's certain things that you can that are guaranteed in life: death, taxes, and Patrick Mahomes doing well. Well, it's also Travis Kelce doing well as well, because it's just what it is. Like that's how it is. AJ, anything from you before we move on to week 12?
No, I'm good on that. We can go
forward. Good stuff. That's our week 11 fantasy recap. Now let's turn our attention to week 12 and really the remainder of the fantasy football season, gentlemen, because what I want to talk about first here, before we get into your rankings, Aaron, is talking about guys that are trade for candidates and maybe trade away candidates as well. As we enter, a lot of people have their trade deadlines coming up. People want to know about certain trades. I'm going to rattle off a few trades to you guys, and you're going to tell me what sides you'd prefer. But I want to start off with asking you which players you guys are actively trying to trade for in your own leagues, and maybe not in the Stack League, but in other leagues. What players are you actively trying to trade for to get them on your teams heading into the playoffs and heading into the trade deadline? Aaron, I'll start with you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear a word you said. No, I'm playing with you. I thought you always throw us for a loop here, and I'm ready, but I'm never ready. I thought I
told you that we were doing this at the beginning of the show. We are going to talk trade for and trade away candidates. That is my word.
Yeah, I thought you were going to be like, is this a trade for candidate? Like for me to randomly just have names. I'm not actively shopping. I'll do trade aways because I'm not actively shopping for anybody. I don't actively shop like that. I'm not a believer in go and looking for players to shop for. That's not a thing for me. I don't believe that in fantasy. I like my team. If I have players I'm trying to trade away, I will try to find equal value for them in return. But I'm not actively looking at people's roster saying, "Ooh, I'm going to go shoot for this guy." No, I don't do that. I drafted my team. I pick up my team. That's the team I like. I like to get rid of people. So, for instance, I have Deshaun Watson, Justin Fields, and Tua Tagovailoa. I am actively shopping a quarterback. If you have Justin Fields, it's more than likely you either got him later or you probably had another quarterback at some point in time this season. With the injury, it makes it a little bit tougher because you're not sure if he's going to miss time at this point or not. But if you have a Deshaun Watson, I would start trying to move him now to see what you can get. If you have a Josh Allen and you had Justin Fields, I told this to a guy at the Atlanta Falcons game. I said, trade Josh Allen. Why not? You can get a lot for Josh Allen and you have Justin Fields there. Obviously, again, it changes with the injury. So look for positions that you have heavy volume that you can't play players. Listen, it is okay to trade good players. I don't know. Let me say this better. If you are super deep at running back and your running back 5 is a player that can't crack your lineup because or you're really weak at receiver, it is okay to downgrade and give up a player that might be more valuable to get a position of need that you could actually play and win with. People are so caught up in winning and losing deals, and it's more about what to build a team. It's just like real football. Like you have to build a team that is able to get you points. So don't be afraid to lose a deal in order to what?
I don't know if you guys can see that.
Don't be afraid to lose a deal or what perceived that
man don't even have Justin Fields.
You have a bigger name. Names are okay to trade. Names are names. The production is what you're looking at. And if you have a weak position that you need to address it. And that would be my biggest trade advice. Like specific targets, guys that you can go out and get. I don't know. The reason, and I know I'm not giving you the answer you want, Vinny, but the reason I say that is because everybody's giving the same advice. Everybody's going to find the guy that's not producing and saying, "Oh, go buy this guy." Like, go try to get this guy. And everybody's get the guy that's overproducing and say, "Oh, sell that guy." Like that advice is everywhere. My advice is look at your team, Where do you need to fill holes at? Where are your weak spots in your lineup, and go attack that? And it doesn't have to be always the star-studded names. It can be the middle of the road wide receiver 2. It can be the wide receiver 2 and nobody really likes, but you can get for a little bit cheaper. It could be the running back 3 that could fill your flex spot and just give you the 8 to 10 points you need a week. And it's not sexy. It's not. People will think you lost, and in the end, your team is better off. So, my biggest one that comes to mind is people that had quarterbacks that have outperformed. Geno Smith. If you were drafted a quarterback high and his name is not Patrick Mahomes, you could trade that quarterback. Kyler Murray, move him, play Geno Smith the rest of the year. I think you're going to get solid quarterback 1 production from Geno Smith the rest of the year. So I think it's okay to do that, and you can fill some spots elsewhere.
Yeah. No,
Sorry if
that
that didn't.
No, I just did that in a league. I had Dameon Pierce, Ken Walker, Joe Mixon, and Alvin Kamara, and one of those players are not in my lineup, and it was unfortunate. But I was weaker at wide receiver. My starting wide receivers were Tyreek Hill and Michael Pittman. I flipped Dameon Pierce for a T. Higgins and was able to get a wide receiver 2 that's going to be in my lineup every day for a running back that was not going to be in my lineup. Turns out Dameon Pierce had a tough week this week, and it really worked in my favor because I was playing the person who had Dameon Pierce. So that worked out great. But it's just that situation where you're in. It's okay. You don't have to don't worry about the talent. I put some players on my trade block this week for it's okay to trade players who have been great. You say this all the time that you can't live on past production. You're not going to get what points they got in week 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11, 12. I just put Ken Walker and Joe Mixon and Josh Jacobs on my block because I'm a playoff team right now, and their playoff schedules are not that favorable. And similar to what Justin Fields, he doesn't have that great of a playoff schedule. Neither does Tua Tagovailoa. So when you're looking at those kind of things, it's okay. It's okay to trade those guys who have been killing it to try and better your team. Don't get caught up in what points you've gotten from the past. AJ, since this question has kind of spun into this direction, what players in the trade realm do you feel like need to be talked about, whether it's a trade away, trade for, or someone that you want to discuss about a trade?
I mean, I got some names that I think you can look at trading for, trading away. Thinking of trading away guys, if people are keen to look at just the last week and not really look at an entire body of work, it may be a little bit more difficult. People may run and yell back at you, but Terry McLaurin has been pretty decent with Taylor Heineke. Last week, Heineke only threw about 15 times, so his production looked down. But you look before that, 20.8 points, 10.6, 16.6, 18.3. He's had some double-digit games that look good. If you can sell him and trade him for something back, when he goes into the playoffs, he's playing against the Giants, who played pretty decently, and he's playing against San Francisco, and we know what that defense has looked like. And then in Week 17, he's got Cleveland, and who knows with Deshaun Watson, maybe that entire team is glowed up and playing better. But so I think he could be a good target to trade away. And then some guys you can trade for. Najee Harris, you can try to sell high, or you can try to sell high with Najee Harris and hope the person trying to get him after his big game last week. Not to mention he's carried the ball 20 times over the last each of the last 2 weeks. So the volume, as we know, is always going to be there. So those are just 2 quick names that come to mind that could be some trade targets for and away. Both good players, so both should make the other person happy if you can get them off your roster. It may make you happy depending on what you can get back as well.
Let's answer some chat questions here. Avila, it might be, I'm sorry if I mess up the pronunciation here. The DeAndre Swift or Cortland Sutton half PPR, which one rest of season would you rather have, Aaron?
It's tough because we talked about DeAndre Swift this past weekend about how the little production he's getting, plus Jamal Williams has taken the goal line touches. But listen, DeAndre Swift has to be one of the better point per touch guys in the NFL. Like the dude, another double-digit game, and he's not getting the touches that a lot of these guys are getting. Cortland Sutton in that offense, I don't know that I trust it. I like Sutton. You guys know how much I like Sutton. He had a nice day. I just don't know that I trust what he's able to do on a consistent basis. I think I lean DeAndre Swift here with the upside. I think Sutton, what we see Sutton around 12 points is going to be 12 to 15 points is his ceiling right now. And I think if as DeAndre Swift continues to go, maybe he gets healthier. I'm a guy that likes to take a little bit of a risk. I think Swift is a little bit riskier because of the injury, but I'm also thinking the upside's a lot more. And I think that upside is just too significant for me. So I would take DeAndre Swift, especially in a half PPR league.
AJ, on board with that?
Yeah, I agree. I also think Swift's going to play a little bit more going forward as he gets healthier. And he might also, to me, be another target that you can really go after, and people will be willing to let him go. And
I keep saying that, but is he?
You're hoping because we, like you said, he's efficient when he does get the ball. And we didn't think yesterday he'd play much. I have to imagine he's going to get healthier, now because he's not playing much. And
he's only playing like 30% of the snaps all the way back since week 3.
So if you're looking at it and you think maybe come week 14 against Minnesota, week 15, going into the playoffs, if he's up around 52% of the snaps, I mean, what he can do with that. I mean, even with these small amount of snaps, he still scored each of the last 2 weeks. And again, I know that's unpredictable. You're not thinking he's going to score every single week, but like,
no, DeAndre Swift is definitely a heavy point per touch guy. Like he touches the ball, he scores fantasy points. That's really the key. That's why we're so concerned with his volume over most people's, because if he touches the football, he is going to score. Like that I agree with. And like I said, I don't think it's bad. I think that's
right.
I do think there's a chance. His upside is obviously higher than Sutton's for me, which is why I think we both selected him. I'm just still worried about that upside. Like, when is it going to happen? When is he going to play more? Because Jamal Williams right now is just eating around the red zone. And they make sure they get Swift one. They make sure they get Swift, opportunities in the game, and he makes the most of them. But I'm a big DeAndre Swift guy.
I'll say that is the scariest part too. You have DeAndre Swift on if you acquire DeAndre Swift, you do have that fear of you're going to miss the big game because you're going to trade for him and plug him right in. And then you're going to miss the game where he goes off, plug him in for the next week, and then he's, mediocre. So that is a fear to actually think about with DeAndre Swift as well.
Yeah. I was DeAndre Swift's playoff schedule as well is one of the best in the league as well. He's got the Jets, Carolina, and Chicago in playoff weeks. Good matchups for DeAndre Swift. That's why I would also triple down on this. Connor asks, Rachaad White or David Montgomery rest of season full PPR? Aaron.
I think you got to go Monty here, but it's closer than it appears. The only reason I'm taking Montgomery is because Khalil Herbert's out. And 4 weeks of no Khalil Herbert is going to do you wonders in getting into the playoffs and the beginning of the playoff, that first playoff week. David Montgomery has a way, I don't know if you guys remember, but 2 seasons in a row, David Montgomery has been one of the better running backs in football down the stretch. He's had some favorable schedules and things like that. But Rachaad White still has to deal with Leonard Fournette. He still has to deal with an offense that's going to be more pass heavy than it is run heavy. No offensive line. I know David Montgomery has not been good, and it's not easy to say this, but I do believe with Philly's defense, Buffalo's defense is decent against the run, and then Detroit in the final game, I think Montgomery has another favorable schedule, but more so than anything, the injuries to Khalil Herbert hurt, because I watched Tristan Ebner run up close. He's not Khalil Herbert, and it's going to be David Montgomery that's going to have to do some work. So give me David Montgomery. A big day against Atlanta. He had 21. I like David Montgomery here down the stretch again.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was fitting in the same spot. My only thought was the fact you mentioned PPR. Both these guys, are sitting around 3 targets more often than not, if anything. And then the only other worry, and it's not huge, is just that Rachaad White's had his bye, and David Montgomery still has his coming up. But that's 1 week. If you can, sustain that, you should be fine.
I also think if Justin Fields is injured, it's even more leaning heavily towards David Montgomery because they're going to have to run the football a lot more, and you're going to get more checkdowns to David Montgomery than you would if Justin Fields was there, because he's probably taking off in some of those instances. So give me Monty.
Okay. There you go. All right. Well, let's get back into business here. I do have one question though, and I want to see you guys' thoughts. And this doesn't really, it doesn't necessarily pertain, and it doesn't pertain to our leagues. Jesus, I didn't even realize where we're at in time. Last question involving trades then. In a league that you are in with friends, I'm in 2 leagues that I'm in with friends, including our league, where teams are out of
my friend.
Work acquaintances. But teams are like on the verge of being out of it. And it made me think of it because Bailey said, I don't care. My season's over. I will trade him. Where do you guys sit on not taking advantage of the weaker teams? Because in a league that I'm in, a money league where money is on the line, where you can win 600, a good amount of money if you win this league. Someone traded Alvin Kamara for Brian Robinson and like Curtis Samuel. It was just like some joke of a trade. But the team that traded Alvin Kamara was out of it and said, screw it, I don't care. Where are we at in terms of that, taking advantage of teams? Like, are you actively trying to do that? Do you just say, I don't care, like that's, I want to win? Or do you like not want to like go stoop to that level?
So here's the thing. I see what you're saying, right? But if, like you said, there's money on the line, if there's people who don't care and are doing it, well, they're going to be winning that money. So if that's what you were surrounded with, you're not taking the high road when you're trying to win money. You know what I mean? Now, with that being said, and there in one of my leagues, I'm going to be looking into putting this up for a conversation. Once you're mathematically out of it, you shouldn't be able to make trades, like especially if they're going to be looking like that. That's always been my issue with the conversation of vetoing. Yeah, I hate it. It shouldn't be done. But when you're doing stuff like that and it's costing everybody else because it's clearly just wrong and unfair, I think that's a different conversation than just, oh, I don't like that trade because I didn't get it, But if other people are doing it and money's on the line and the weaker teams are giving up, if you're going to take the high road, well, you're also going to take the first road off of the playoff bus, and that's not where you want to be. So if that's where your season's at and you can get in on that train, I would.
This conversation has been one that's been around forever. But look, first of all, people who veto trades, get out of here. Okay, I hate vetoing trades.
I only trade the trade. I don't like you, but I did.
The trades should not be vetoed. The reason trades should not be vetoed is because it's the conversations that we have had in Trade Talks, Vinny. Your value isn't my value. I may not. When people say, I don't care, I'm just going to trade. Well, let me tell you something. They care, because if they didn't care, they wouldn't waste their time trading. They would just abandon their team and just not worry about setting a lineup. They're not giving up. What they're doing is they're frustrated at the fact that Alvin Kamara has been bad these past 2 weeks, and maybe they need to win now and win every game. So they go get a guy that's had a good game in Brian Robinson and Curtis Samuel. First of all, I don't think that trade's that lopsided as enough to be vetoed. However, because of a circumstance that somebody might be in with least wins. But if somebody cares enough to go out and make a trade, they want to win. They just don't know how. They just don't know. They're frustrated that their team is not producing. I always say this: unless you are mathematically eliminated from a playoff contention, we as fantasy players don't really have the right to tell what somebody's value is. I value players much differently than many people. And if somebody had the power or ability to tell me, you can't make this deal because this player is better than this player, what's my argument always? You can't get past production. I think my player is going to be better going forward. But that's my opinion. That's my choice. I paid money just like everybody else in this league to run my team. You don't get to tell me what I get to do with my team. Could you imagine if the NFL, if a team cut somebody and the NFL said, you can't cut that player? Like, this is my team. I can cut whoever the hell I want to cut. I can trade who I want to trade. And I paid money to do that. So I hate vetoes. I do think there needs to be a level of fairness that every owner and like ethics owners should have. And there are people that ruin that. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's a case-by-case basis. And the trade has to be so lopsided where it's, hey, I traded my kicker for Saquon Barkley today. Like that kind of collusion stuff for me to even get involved. Other than that, you have your values. You have your values. I might think it's dumb. I might think you're an idiot and you're probably going to lose, but it's your choice. It's your team. So if somebody wants to go trade Josh Allen for, Latavius Murray right now, because he's now the starter in Denver, I'm going to look at you sideways. But it's your team. Like, it's your team. I'm not here to judge anybody or say anybody's trying to collude together or anything, because I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But if you're mathematically eliminated, you cannot trade. That should be a rule across every league, because you have no business trying to make your team better. All you should do is start your best players every week to make sure that you're being fair to every owner that has to play against you, and ride your team out. And that's it.
Okay. All right. That's where I wanted
That's
to get
my
at
opinion.
here. That's where I wanted to get at here, just to, because I feel like that's a common thing between a lot of leagues, and not just this one in particular and what we're in, but in general. But okay,
I haven't really had that many issues with that, to be honest. I played in a lot of leagues. Most people are pretty upstanding about what they're doing. They're just trying to get better. Unless you're in dynasty leagues, then you're going to see lopsided deals because people are selling off veterans to get rookie picks.
My next question.
Yeah, dynasty is definitely different when you're selling veterans and players that are producing and you're falling out of contention. It's a quote tanking, but if you're acquiring assets for future, there is nothing wrong with that. That's part of the game.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, let's pivot here. We gotta get a roll in here. So let's now dive in to your fantasy stock report for week 12. Let's talk rankings for week 12. Taking a look at the running backs for this upcoming week. We got some big Thanksgiving Day football on the horizon. With our running backs, though, it's Christian McCaffrey, of course, right at the top. Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley in your top 6 running backs. Rounding it out is Dalvin Cook, Ramondre Stevenson, Jonathan Taylor, Ken Walker, Aaron Jones, and Tony Pollard. Aaron, I want to go right into Tony Pollard, if you don't mind, and discuss his week here. Ezekiel Elliott's healthy, and we have had strong conversations on this show about Zeke versus Pollard. Zeke, Pollard. Pollard's top 12 running back, according to you, this week. What's now going on in your mind between Pollard and Zeke for at least this upcoming week?
Not much. Same. I think the difference here is I think Zeke's still working his way back. I think they're going to be cautious with him. They're not going to run him 20 times or anything like that. This is a matter of Zeke will start. Zeke will get the goal line touches. But one thing you have to take into consideration is what the Detroit Lions were able to do against the Giants. They ran the football right down their throat. The running backs had a big day there. It was DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. I think you're going to see a lot of the same stuff you saw against the Vikings, against the Giants. And because of that, I think Tony Pollard has another nice day here. I think Tony Pollard, he might be able to, when Zeke is in there, like playing, he might be able to crack my top 10, but not very many times is he going to crack my top 10. And the reason is because he has to be so efficient with his touches. And he's one of the more efficient running backs with his touches, by the way, in Tony Pollard. But he had a couple of big plays in that game against Minnesota, scored the touchdowns, and that really stood out. Obviously, with the heavy fantasy production that he was able to put up. But as I've said throughout the course of his career, that's not always the case. It's not always 6 targets in the passing game. It's not always 15 carries. Sometimes it's 9 and 4, and he doesn't get to the end zone, and he finishes with 80 total yards, and he's at 10 fantasy points. Like there are days like that for him. So I always temper the expectations a little bit when you're splitting the touches still with Zeke. When Zeke's out, obviously he goes to be a top 5 running back in my opinion. But in this case, Zeke is back. Zeke will run the football some. He'll take some touchdowns away from him. He'll be in there on some third downs when they need pass protection that Tony Pollard is. God, he's not good at. But Tony Pollard's an RB1 again this week.
All right.
He's not, man. I'm telling you, it's so frustrating sometimes how bad running backs can be when they block. That's one of the things that Tony Pollard needs to ask Zeke about and just, hey, can you help me?
Yeah, figure it out. Help me figure it out here. AJ, when you see the top 12, is there any name that stands out to you that you want to discuss? Maybe not even it has to do with where they're ranked, but maybe you like the matchup a lot this week or not like the matchup a lot?
Yeah, I do actually, and it's at number 10, Ken Walker. Going to have himself a pretty good day, in my opinion. Seattle's coming off of the loss in Germany and then getting a bye, so well rested. And when we last saw him in Germany, wasn't great to start. He couldn't really get the run going. Was just stuffed at the line in Tampa Bay. Only had 10 carries for 17 yards. But then they adapted. We talked about Seattle this season, and they adapt. Pete Carroll makes the changes as necessary. With it. He's done it with Geno, and in week 10 they did it with Ken Walker. Couldn't get the run going, no big deal. We know how explosive you are. Let's get him 8 targets, 6 receptions, and 55 yards. Now going up against a Las Vegas team that ranks 29th against running backs in fantasy football production. I look for Ken Walker to bounce back in a pretty decent way. And Seattle now has something to play for. San Francisco's looking pretty dope. So they got to come in and they got to be looking as perfect as they can, or at least as good as they have been all season while shocking the rest of the world. So I think Ken Walker has himself a good day and is probably the part of the offense that helps jumpstart the rest.
Okay. All right. I don't hate that. I own Ken Walker and everywhere. So
talk about that if you need.
No, what?
About how you own Ken Walker everywhere. We can have some discussions and help you out with that problem.
I mean, we can if you want to. But there's your top 12 running backs, Aaron. Any other names for you, Aaron, that you want to bring up before we move on?
Not really. I think the Ramondre Stevenson up there at number 8 is a nice play against Minnesota. We saw what they couldn't stop. But I don't know that I can move anybody past the top 7, 8 guys. Like, it's just a matter of, like, who are you really moving? Josh Jacobs against Seattle? Nah, nope. I just don't find anybody that I can really move. It's interesting. Actually, I do want to talk about Saquon Barkley because tough day against Detroit. And everybody looks at this Dallas matchup and probably put him up higher than I did. One thing people don't realize is, as crazy as this sounds, Dallas is actually not bad against the run. For fantasy wise, they're not. It's weird. It's a weird thing, but they give up yards, but they don't give up scores. And it's I don't even know. It's really hard to explain, but they're not a bottom team as far as giving up fantasy points per game to running backs, despite them giving up a lot of yards. It's weird. They rush defense is bad, but it's not bad, if that makes sense.
No, yeah. I mean,
so I think that's an interesting note, because if you look at most people ranking, I'm sure Saquon Barkley is going to be up there because Dallas has been, quote, bad against the running game. But I think that's one thing that people need to realize is they're not so bad to where you're like, oh my God, I got to make sure that I put Saquon Barkley, this high. They're actually only giving up 16.9 fantasy points per game. It's 4th best.
You are correct. It is hard to explain.
fourth best in fantasy points, but yet give up a ton of rushing yards, because yards don't equate fantasy points. They don't give up anything in the passing game to running back. They usually are, because their defense is so fast, and they don't give up a lot of touchdowns in general. So they're not giving up a lot of points. It's just, you can give up 150 rush yards to 3 different running backs. It's not going to be a great fantasy day for one of them. So it's just something that, to pay attention to. But I do think Saquon Barkley still has to be somewhere in your top 10 because of his upside.
Yeah, no, definitely. Let's turn our attention to the RB2s this week. Jeff Wilson Jr. at 13, Travis Etienne 14, Najee Harris 15, Alvin Kamara 16, Antonio Gibson 17, Dameon Pierce 18, and then on the other side we got James Conner, Miles Sanders, David Montgomery, Ezekiel Elliott, James Robinson, and Leonard Fournette here. Aaron, what name stands out to you the most here as someone that needs to be talked about as maybe a worry or maybe a strong play this week that you think has some good upside? Or take us through your RB2s.
Well, I love Antonio Gibson this week. We saw what David Montgomery was able to do. I think he's the guy you want to own in that Washington backfield. It goes back to my day one. Brian Robinson's nice, but he's very touchdown dependent. Antonio Gibson gets involved in the pass game as well. They split him out. They do a lot of different things with them. But Dameon Pierce, I talked about Dameon Pierce last week, and I told everybody, like, they have to temper the expectations for Dameon Pierce. He is an RB2 who is going to be touchdown dependent, and you see it. Like, I love him. That's Bainbridge, stand up. He a dog from a running back perspective. At the NFL level, Dameon Pierce is a guy. But we have to separate that fantasy from reality. If you want a guy that breaks tackles and pushes the pile and gets those hard working yards, that's Dameon Pierce. But it's not going to equate to fantasy production. Fantasy production is about volume, but it's also about getting scoring opportunities. That means touchdowns, which Houston doesn't get a lot of, and in the pass game, which they don't check down a whole lot. He's had a few games where they've done that. So pretty much Dameon Pierce is what he is. He's a middle to back end RB2 for me. Going forward, that's what he is. He's going to have his boom days where he gets into the end zone a couple of times, and then he's going to have the days where he goes 18 for 89 and it's just 8 points, and you're like, man, I need more from him. So that's just what he's going to be going forward, and we have to realize that that's what it is. If you can sell him, sell him. If not, just understand you're getting RB2 production.
Yeah, I think that's definitely where we're at with Dameon Pierce. Alvin Kamara, 16. Let's talk Jeff Wilson Jr., AJ. I'm going to throw that one at you. Jeff Wilson Jr. with the Dolphins. He's got Houston this week. Obviously, the matchup is juicy. That's the obvious thing. But what do you think of Jeff Wilson Jr. maybe for rest of season? And obviously, you can talk about this week if you want.
You know, Vinny, you're so good at your job because that's exactly who I was going to talk about if you asked me who I want to talk about anyways, was Jeff Wilson Jr. and what he's meant to that Miami offense since he's got there. You know, came over for Mike McDaniel, who had a lot to say with what Jeff Wilson was doing when he was given the opportunity in San Francisco. And since he's been there, he's played 50% of snaps and 61% of snaps and had himself a day before the bye, 17 carries on 119 yards. Not to mention, they need this type of running game to balance out that heavy, awesome, amazing pass attack with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And on top of that, if they want to keep passing, Jeff Wilson Jr. is a guy that they can pass the ball to as well. Rest of the season, you know, obviously he's got this nice matchup with Houston, and then you got a tough one against San Francisco, but at the same time, that's a team that Mike McDaniel and Jeff Wilson knows very well. It's a team he's played against a lot. Maybe he has a better day than we've seen some other running backs have against San Francisco. Then you get the Chargers, whose run defense has been pretty bad for all season, as we talk about week in and week out. Jeff Wilson Jr., if you still have an opportunity in some leagues, might be another one of those guys we talk about as a trade for target down the stretch. He's not a big enough name to some people that they won't move off of him, but he's got the potential to give you enough production going forward to be a very solid flex play, very solid RB2 play. So I do enjoy a Jeff Wilson Jr.
Yeah, and Jeff Wilson Jr. now sits at the top of your running backs, your RB2s. Aaron, are you? I normally ask this stupid question of saying who's the running back that you think is likely to get into the top 12 from the RB2 situation. Jeff Wilson Jr. That running back for you, right? That's the easy answer. No, okay.
No,
oh,
I would say it's Alvin Kamara. Or Najee Harris, one of those two. Jeff Wilson Jr. I'm probably on the opposite end of where AJ's at. I think Jeff Wilson Jr. is a trade candidate. I think you after this week, you let him have another nice week and then you trade him, because outside of the Charger game, I don't like the schedule down the stretch, and I think that changes their offense changes down the stretch. I don't think they're going to be running the football the way they've been running it. He's had really 2 good weeks, but look at the teams he's played. He's played the Bears and the Browns, 2 of the worst run defenses in football. I think it was more of a matchup thing than it was when they get in these tight games and they play against good teams, Miami, they're going to throw the football. They're going to throw it to Tyreek Hill. They're going to throw it to Jalen Waddle. And I don't know that he's going to get 17 carries in a game. And I don't think without 17 carries, I don't think Jeff Wilson's going to be efficient enough against better defenses to really have sustained fantasy value. I think he's more of a flex play for the rest of the season. But if you can trade him as an RB2 after this Houston game, I would do that.
Yeah,
right, that's mine.
Well, there's your running backs here, your RB1s and your RB2s. Let's take a look at your wide receivers now. Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, CeeDee Lamb, and Justin Jefferson are your top 6 wide receivers this week. Lots of juicy matchups within those top 6 wide receivers here. Aaron, who has the juiciest? Well, I'm not going to go that route. That's a stupid question. Yeah, it's obvious Stephon Diggs has the juiciest of matchups that week. It's not even going to be fair. But let's talk about Keenan Allen here. Or let's talk about. I didn't want to talk about Keenan Allen because I know you guys give me shit all the time because of talking about players that I own.
Man, jumped to 11.
I think Keenan Allen is someone that should be talked about here because coming off of the injury last week, I felt like the game plan was not to use Keenan Allen as much as they did But then when Mike Williams went down, it changed that game plan. Because remember, before that game, Brandon Staley came out and said that there would be a snap count for Keenan Allen, 25 to 30 snaps for him. And then Mike Williams goes down and that game plan changes in a game that was almost a must-win game, if not a must-win game for the Chargers. Now, week 2 of his return tour, he gets a favorable matchup. You put him in at 11, Aaron. I just wanted to get your overall thoughts on Keenan Allen, not for my personal own benefit, but because Keenan Allen is a hot topic in terms of the fantasy world.
Oh, so not because of your own team. I just want to make that very clear. Okay.
No, and I don't know how to talk these rankings anymore. It always seems to be that I just have the most questionable guys. It's just I have the most questionable guys. That's really what it is.
Sure. No, I don't think Keenan Allen. I mean, first of all, I think Keenan Allen's fine. He didn't play an abnormal amount of snaps. He played 40 snaps, something like that. I don't think it was too much. We saw him on the sideline plenty. I think they managed him well. I think he's fine. I think he comes back and he's obviously on the field, so he's healthy enough to play. They just don't want to overexert the hamstring. You have another week now to rest up and to get that right. And he's probably going to be a little sore from coming out of his first game action, but they'll figure that out. And Keenan Allen, when he's on the field, we've seen what he's capable of doing. He's one of the better receivers in football. Made a big-time catch down the sideline, led them to score, and then, they got Patrick Mahomes. So I have no worries about Keenan Allen other than injuries, but I don't rank because of injuries, could happen. I just can't do that. And especially if I know he played a game and he got out of that unscathed and healthy, I can't assume somebody's going to get hurt. If that was the case, then I'd always put certain guys lower, and that's not the case. Now, if you come in questionable or not sure you're going to play, I will push you down. But everything that I've seen so far says he came out of that game okay. He's fine, and I think those snaps should ramp up, and it's Keenan Allen, so he deserves to be up there.
Yeah, we talked about this, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago with the wide receiver position now becoming almost like the tight end position, what the tight end position was before, where it's just it's the same guys right at the top every single week. You're always seeing Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, D-Hop, Justin Jefferson. These guys every week, there's not much – I don't know if the parity is the right word. There's not much parity when it comes to the wide receiver position, at least the wide receiver ones. It's pretty much always the same type of guys. As you see in this week's rankings here. But then it starts to get a little different when you get to 13 through 24, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't even get that different when you get to wide receiver 2s. Amon-Ra St. Brown at 13, Amari Cooper 14, Jalen Waddle 15, Chris Olave 16, Tyler Lockett 17, Deebo Samuel 18. AJ, is there any names that to you need to be discussed here heading into week 12 that is a standout for a good matchup or a bad matchup?
I mean, the obvious one is Jalen Waddle just has the opportunity to be better. I think we are looking at another week with Derek Stingley Jr. being out of the lineup, and that makes that defense a little bit more attackable, for lack of a better word. I already brought up what Kenneth Walker's going to do. You can look at DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett down here. At 17 against a pretty bad Las Vegas team. But honestly, I don't think any name here where I look at, I'm just like, that one has a question mark for me. Or, you can look at 23 with Tyler Boyd in Tennessee and think he has the opportunity to have a better day with a defensive secondary that hasn't been great as of late. But then you look at what he did last week, and it took him all the way to the fourth quarter to even be noticeable. So on this, I think this wide receiver 2 list, 13 to 24, just kind of has everybody exactly where they should be. In all honesty, even with the matchups and where they are and what they've been giving up.
Yeah, I just grasp for straws. Yeah, I just grasp for straws when I look at that, and I'm like, okay, where do I go in terms of asking a question? I think the Jalen Waddle conversation is a good one though, because Aaron, you have been known, and in your past rankings, you have had no problem putting both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in the top 10 and the top 12. If it's a juicy enough matchup. Houston is a juicy enough matchup, I feel like. But you do have Jalen Waddle at 15. Is there a reason behind this that I'm not seeing?
Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill were both in the top 10 the last 2 weeks that they played before the bye week, but they also had Detroit and Chicago, or Cleveland and Chicago. I'm not sure. Or Chicago and Detroit, 2 of the last 3 weeks, whenever they played Detroit and Chicago. I had them both in there. And it panned out. Jalen Waddle was a top 10 receiver, but he's only been a top 10 receiver 3 times. And Houston's defense is not bad against the pass. They got blown out by Washington. It wasn't because they couldn't stop the pass. Taylor Heineke had a pedestrian day. Houston's 4th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position, despite Derek Stingley being there or not being there. They are a good defense against the pass, and it's because they don't give up big plays. We talk about what Lovie Smith likes to do. Well, it's that cover 2 shell. He's going to run that cover 2 shell. He's not going to give up big plays to these guys. He's going to make you catch and run with the football and drive down the field. And I'm not saying that Miami can't do it because they got Tyreek Hill and they got Jalen Waddle. Those 2 boys are bad, but the matchup is not as favorable as it may seem because Houston's so bad. So plus Houston wants to run the football a lot. It's going to be a game where they want to run and milk clock and all that stuff. I think the game's quicker. But he's still good enough to be a wide receiver too. Like we're talking about the difference between being 9 and being 14. It's 3, 5, 6 fantasy points. That could be the difference in the opportunities that he's given against Houston. So Waddle will be fine, but I think you still have to temper expectations against a defense that has shown that they can stop passing games. Like they're not giving up a lot in the passing game, especially to receivers.
Yeah, and it could be a game script thing. I mean, they could go out early, and it could be a Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert type of day with the running backs for Miami, and not so much of the passing game. And when you're playing a team like Houston, let's talk about the guys throwing those wide receivers the ball. Josh Allen, number 1, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts round out your top 6 quarterbacks. Then we got Dak, Geno, Joe Burrow, Mr. Thomas Brady, Kyler Murray, and Derek Carr as your QB1s this week. Let's talk about Kyler Murray, Aaron, because the hamstring injury has now kept him sidelined for 2 straight weeks now. The matchup is good against the Los Angeles Chargers, but he hasn't been on the field. What do you expect to see from Kyler Murray this week if he's on the field?
Well, if he's on the field, he'll be in my top 7. But I put him at 11 because I don't know. He's just there because I don't want to leave him off because he has had 2 weeks now that I think he should be returning. But like I said, as we get closer to Sunday, it's only Tuesday. As we get closer to Sunday, get more updates, we'll figure out if he plays or not. But if he's on the field, he's going up. It's Kyler Murray. Yeah. That's all I can say.
It's Kyler Murray, and it's also the rushing, the ability of Kyler Murray and the terrible rush defense the Los Angeles Chargers have. Normally it's fire up your running backs that play against the Chargers defense, but with Kyler Murray and his legs, Kyler Murray can really do some damage.
The thing with guys like Kyler Murray is his ceiling is super high, but his floor is so high because of the rushing ability. Like he's had 1 week where he hasn't finished better than quarterback 14. So just outside the quarterback 1. And that was the week 3 against the Rams where he scored 13 points. Other than that, he's been QB8, QB3, QB10, QB12, QB7, QB8, QB6. Like he's not a guy that's going to finish QB18. Like it's just that's not who he is because of the rushing ability. And you see what it's done with Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson. Their ceiling is so high when they can also throw the ball, but their floor is capped, or the floor is high because we know they're going to get you 40, 50 yards on the ground, maybe a touchdown. And that is like having an extra running back in your backfield. So the floor is too high. Kyler Murray's a quarterback 1 if he plays.
Yeah. AJ, any quarterback stand out to you before we move on to tight ends?
Yeah. Tom Brady at 10. What a world we live in when Tom Brady's in double digits. But rightfully so. I think he's got himself a good opportunity to surpass that. And again, we're splitting hairs. We do that on the show every so often. You look at Tom Brady and the volume just is absurd. We're talking about a guy who's thrown the ball more than 50 times in 3 games. More than 40 times in about 5 games, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that's correct. The volume is just there on the middle of the pack Cleveland defense. So Chris Godwin's gotten healthier. He's looking more and more like his old self. I think Tom Brady has a chance to get over to that left side of Aaron's rankings this upcoming week against the Cleveland defense. And sadly, Deshaun Watson will be coming back to just kind of get football under his belt so he's ready to go next season because it may not be too pretty for Cleveland this upcoming week.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson still has a few weeks left, and it's, they are hoping, they're waiting patiently for his return, but until then, it might still be a struggle. Tom Brady, a quarterback that fell off for a few weeks, and then after that, what was the?
I thought AJ was going the other way. I thought you were going to say he's too high.
Oh yeah, no.
Tom Brady hasn't been in the top 10 outside of 2 weeks, and the Browns just shut down Josh Allen. Like, I don't know. I thought you were going the other way because I was worried about putting him at 10. I was like, man, I don't know, but I was like, it's go. It's Brady.
I'm more take what Josh Allen did, just attributed to that crazy week he talked about. And I get it. Like over the past couple of weeks, the turnovers has been an issue. He's made some questionable decisions, but I attributed that more to just the chaos that was surrounding them than I did to the Browns, as well as they may have played. I think Tom Brady has started to turn the corner later in the season and start headed the right direction. So despite what the Browns have done, I feel that he's headed in the correct direction.
Yeah. For some context, Vinny, the Browns allow 15.9 points per game to the quarterback position. So not bad. They're not middle of the road. They're top 15.
Yeah, I think really where we're at with Brady and it being there, and I would feel comfortable about putting him there. You know me, there has been past weeks where I'm like, drop Brady down, continue to drop him down. I think they're starting to figure it out, though. I think that offense is starting to figure it out, and we talk about all the time with a Brady-led team that their season doesn't start really until the playoffs. We just start shrugging off the regular season. Well, starting to get closer and closer to that playoff time, and we slowly start to see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and a Brady-led team figure it out and get ready for the playoffs. And I think that it plays into is big here when judging Tom Brady and his fantasy output. And 10 is, I think, a good spot for him right there. That's your quarterbacks, your QB1s. Let's talk tight ends now to finish today's rankings off. Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, the Muth, Pat Freiermuth, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson, Tyler Higbee. Maybe we're getting back on track here, Aaron. Maybe we're starting to get back on track.
Honestly, it doesn't matter. This tight end is useless. If you don't have Travis Kelce and you don't have Mark Andrews, who cares? Pick one of them, throw a dart, and good luck.
Well,
I think that's the chart at George Kittle.
Well, I think the dart. I think we can talk about two of the darts here that are making their first time appearances on your top 12 tight ends. It's Foster Moreau and Juwan Johnson. Foster Moreau with the Las Vegas Raiders. Juwan Johnson getting a lot of touchdown looks from Andy Dalton in the New Orleans Saints offense. Those two guys new on your list here, Aaron. How confident are you in those dart throws?
I'm not confident in anybody except for Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews. I said it already.
All right.
You trying to pull teeth, and I'm trying to tell you there ain't no teeth left to pull. If it ain't Travis Kelce and it's not Mark Andrews, you can take every other tight end and pick one, and good luck. Like, there is no substantial evidence that says the tight end that you pick out of any of the other ones is going to be good.
All right. Well, let's end our rankings then. There's your top 12 quarter. AJ, is there any tight end you want to talk about, or we're good to move on?
Kyle Pitts isn't on this list. It's about damn time. Let me stop.
I almost put him on there just out of respect. I was like, man, I can't believe he got hurt.
Out of respect. All right,
he was actually having a good game last week before they blew out his knee.
Yeah.
Not
good, Bob. Not good.
Well, by the way, I witnessed it. Marcus Mariota is the worst quarterback ever in the land, bro. I mean, he had dudes wide open, and the ball's like 16 feet over their head, and it's in the dirt. He is so inaccurate. It's ridiculous.
Remember at the beginning of the season that I said Marcus Mariota was the 32nd best quarterback in the NFL, and then everyone got mad at me?
You were still wrong.
You were wrong.
You're still wrong.
You were wrong. He's played far better than the 32nd worst quarterback in the league. Mine was a euphemism when I just said it. Like, I was being sarcastic.
Marcus Mariota is the 31st best quarterback in the NFL.
Really?
31st best quarterback in the NFL.
Carson Wentz.
I'm talking starters here. At
the start of the season, he was a starter.
I was right. You were wrong. Let's get into our waiver wire ads of the week here. Aaron, take us through what you got.
Oh, man, nothing. These guys are just more dart throws.
That does it for another episode of the Sack City Podcast.
No. Put it back up. Matt Collins, I like what he did last week, and that was against a Denver defense that we've lamented as being one of the better defenses in the NFL. Not only did Devontae Adams torch them, but Matt Collins had himself a nice day. 6 for 52, a double-digit game. He's had double digits in 3 of the last 5. He gets Seattle this week. Still no Hunter Renfrow, and then he gets the Chargers. I like him if you're looking for a kind of a deep sneaky, I don't say sleeper, but for points. Jerick McKinnon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is basically a wash in that backfield now, and he got hurt. I like Jerick McKinnon as the first guy off the bench there. He gets involved in the passing game. Yes, it's going to be Isaiah Pacheco's backfield, but I think Jerick McKinnon has some value going forward. And if you get a part of that Chiefs offense, I want it. So if you can add him on your team, then go ahead and do that. Samaje Perine's number 3. Basically, this is just because we don't know what we're going to get with Joe Mixon. When Joe Mixon plays, Perine's still involved in the pass game. He has to score a touchdown in order for it to work, and he scored 3 this past week. So, and if something did happen to Joe Mixon, Perine is the guy. So I think he has to be on your roster. I think he is one of the better handcuffs in football. When you talk about Tony Pollard's and Alexander Madison's, I think Samaje Perine's maybe the most underrated name of that list. James Cook, we saw him start to get involved in Buffalo. Zach Moss obviously gone, clearing the way for James Cook. Nyheim Hines is Nyheim Hines. Let's be honest, he's not it. James Cook, I think, getting more involved as we go forward. I think that could be something to watch as we head down the stretch. Still don't drop good players for these guys, except for maybe Samaje Perine. But guys you can add if you have some extra room. And then Latavius Murray, who now goes from being signed to clearly the only guy in the Denver Broncos backfield because, well, he's the only guy. They waived Melvin Gordon. He's no longer even on the roster. And this frustrates me even more the way they used Javonte Williams last year and this year. And then
it
Chase
always
Edmonds,
comes back to him.
Because it is. Because now it makes me look even more right than I was before, which is hard to do because I'm right. So anyways, Chase Edmonds is also out with that injury, so he'll be missing time. Latavius Murray has a clear path to some relevancy. It's not going to be great. It's Denver, but he has some relevancy. Still be touchdown dependent. Yes, sir.
I might have to solo you more often because I don't think that little box is enough for your head growing and growing and growing and growing from just getting so big head.
My head's been big since I've been born, bruh. Ain't nobody gonna tell me I'm not right. I've been right, and when I'm right, I'm gonna let you know. And when I'm wrong, guess what? I'm still right, and I'm still gonna let you know.
Can you imagine when that thing pops, when like someone just pops it, and how like the explosion of
it'll never happen. Nobody has that much power over me.
It'll be the explosion of just nonsense. Just bullshit.
You're gonna know when I'm right. I'm always gonna tell you when I'm right.
Trust me.
And I'll own it when I'm wrong.
Trust me, we've been doing this show for what, 2-3 years now. We know we're gonna know when you're right. We know that we are all gonna be made well aware. Magoat, Patrick Magoat. That does it though for another Fantasy Drive episode. That's our Week 12 rankings and our Week 11 recap. We'll be back again tomorrow live at 10 a.m. Eastern Time talking power rankings. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of movement here. Can't
wait till the Dallas is the number 1. Dallas is the number 1, baby.
Spoiler alert. All right, that does it for another episode, though. Again, back tomorrow, Power Rankings. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media platforms and subscribe to our YouTube show if you have not already done that already. And if you have, make sure you go share. That's it. For my best friend Aaron Mukes and for your boy AJ Johnson, I am me. We'll see you tomorrow.
Peace out.
What?
Damn, your breath stink through the